You know what really grinds my carapace? Humans. No, seriously. Let me tell you why I'm floating here in this recycled air capsule, dictating my final testimony while my homeworld burns 3 systems away. Let me tell you why the Valdreen Imperium, the greatest civilization to ever span the galactic arm, is currently collapsing like a cheap habitat dome. And let me tell you why it's all because we made one catastrophically stupid decision. We decided to hunt humanity. My name is Korven. Well, that's the closest your primitive vocal cords could get to my actual designation, but we'll go with it. I was a strategic assessor for the Valdreen Military Command. Notice I said, was hard to maintain a career when your entire command structure has been vaporized. Your fleet is scattered across 40 parsecs, and your species is essentially applying for endangered status. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to where this whole mess started. Roughly 8 cycles ago. The Valdreen Imperium had been expanding for 3,000 years. We'd absorbed, conquered, or diplomatically bullied approximately 472 species into our glorious empire. We had the best technology, the finest ships, and an unshakable belief in our own superiority. We were, without question, the apex predators of known space. Then our scout ships found Earth. I remember the briefing like it was yesterday. Our Commander Zilrath, may her molecules rest in scattered peace, stood before the War Council with this absolutely delicious smirk on her feeding appendage. She projected the holographic data above the strategy table, and we all leaned in with interest. Primitive world, she announced, her tone dripping with condescension. Single planetary civilization, no faster than light capability. Chemical rockets, if you can believe it, they've barely made it to their own satellite. Someone in the back, I think it was Tactical Officer Brennix, laughed. Actually laughed. Are we seriously considering conquest protocols for a species that can't even leave their own solar system? Zilrath's smirk widened. Oh, it gets better. Their world is rich in resources, holder, rare minerals, water, diverse biological compounds. But here's the interesting part. She manipulated the display, zooming in on biological data. Their biochemistry is remarkably compatible with most galactic species. Their blood specifically contains a protein structure that our xenobiologists believe could revolutionize our medical technology. That got everyone's attention. How revolutionary are we talking? Asked High Assessor Mectrin. Potentially doubles our lifespan. Revolutionary, Zilrath replied. Maybe more. The preliminary analysis suggests their hemoglobin could be synthesized into a universal treatment for cellular degradation. We're talking about the medical breakthrough of the millennium. Potentially doubles our lifespan. Revolutionary, Zilrath replied. Maybe more. The preliminary analysis suggests their hemoglobin could be synthesized into a universal treatment for cellular degradation. We're talking about the medical breakthrough of the millennium. The room erupted into excited chatter. I'll admit, even I felt a surge of anticipation. Who wouldn't? Extended lifespan, enhanced health, all from some backwater species that hadn't even figured out antimatter propulsion yet. So what's the catch? I asked. Because I'm naturally suspicious, comes with the job. Zilrath waved a dismissive appendage. No catch. They're divided into roughly 200 primitive nations. They still wage wars with gunpowder and metal projectiles. Their most advanced artificial intelligence is barely sentient. They pose zero threat. Zero threat. Remember those words because they're going to become cosmically hilarious in about 6 paragraphs. The council voted unanimously. We'd send a harvesting fleet, establish extraction facilities, and begin systematic collection of human biological materials. The propaganda division even came up with a nice euphemism, voluntary donation program, as if we were going to ask permission. 3 months later, our harvesting fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Earth. I wasn't on the initial contact team. Thank the void. I was back on the command ship, monitoring communications and tactical data. The plan was simple: demonstrate overwhelming superiority, make some demands, establish extraction points in remote areas where resistance would be minimal. Standard operating procedure. We'd done it 472 times before. The humans responded to our arrival with confusion and fear. As expected, their military forces scrambled, which was cute. Their nuclear weapons were charged, which was cuter. Commander Zilrath broadcast the standard ultimatum: surrender, submit to the harvesting program, and your species will be allowed to continue existing under Valdreen protection. What happened next should have been our first warning. Instead of immediate capitulation, the humans asked for time to consider. 48 hours. Zilrath, amused by their audacity, agreed. What could they possibly do in 48 hours? Turns out quite a lot. Hour 12. Human global communications networks went into overdrive. Every nation, every faction, every group that had been fighting each other for the last 10,000 years suddenly started talking, collaborating, planning. Hour 24. Human industrial centers shifted to war production, not just their military nations. Everyone, factory workers who'd been making civilian vehicles started producing weapons. Research facilities that had been working on medical technology pivoted to military applications. Hour 36. The humans started evacuating their major cities, not panicking, mind you. Organized, systematic evacuation. They were preparing for total war. Hour 48. The humans sent their response. It was delivered by a representative named Marcus Cole, speaking on behalf of something they called the Emergency United Earth Command. I watched the transmission from the command deck. Marcus Cole was unremarkable by human standards. Middle-aged, graying hair, wearing some kind of formal military outfit. He looked tired, but his eyes were absolutely cold. "Commander Zilrath," he began, his voice steady. "We've considered your ultimatum. Here's our response. Go to hell." The bridge went silent. Several officers made sounds of disbelief. Cole continued, "You come to our world, threaten our people, demand our blood like we're livestock. Did you really think we'd just roll over? Did you study our history at all? Do you know what humans do when someone tries to take what's ours?" Zilrath recovered quickly, her voice oozing condescension. "You cannot possibly believe you can resist us. We have faster than light travel. We have directed energy weapons. We have conquered hundreds of species. What do you have? Chemical rockets and nuclear bombs." Marcus Cole smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who knows something you don't. "You're right," he admitted. "We don't have your technology, but we have something you clearly lack. We know how to fight when we're outmatched. We've been doing it for our entire existence. Every empire that ever thought humanity was weak learned the same lesson, usually right before they collapsed." He leaned forward, and his next words sent a chill through my entire circulatory system. "You want to harvest us? Come try. But I promise you, Commander, you'll learn why predators on Earth don't hunt humans anymore. Not because we're the strongest or the fastest, because we're the most spiteful, stubborn, and creative killers this galaxy has ever produced. We'll make you regret every drop of blood you try to take." The transmission ended. Zilrath laughed.
Actually laughed.
"Brave words for a species about to be domesticated. Begin the harvesting operations." That's when everything went sideways. The first harvester ships descended toward a location called Siberia, which our intelligence suggested was remote and lightly populated, perfect for establishing initial extraction facilities. The ships landed, deployment teams disembarked and began setting up equipment. Then the snow started shooting back. Turns out the humans had spent their 48 hours hiding thousands of soldiers in underground positions. They'd camouflaged their forces so effectively that our sensors read nothing but empty terrain. The moment our teams were vulnerable, the humans attacked with everything they had. Were their weapons primitive? Absolutely. Chemical propellants, metal projectiles, high explosive compounds that any proper civilization had abandoned millennia ago. But here's the thing about primitive weapons. They still work, especially when you're using them with creativity born from 10,000 years of continuously murdering each other. The humans had something called guerrilla tactics. They'd hit our forces, then disappear. They'd attack supply lines. They'd booby-trap everything. One harvester ship was brought down by something they called a daisy chain IED, which is apparently multiple explosives linked together. Another was destroyed by humans who literally drove a vehicle loaded with explosives into the landing struts. "They're using suicide tactics," one of my colleagues shouted in horror. "No," I corrected, reviewing the data. "They're using sacrifice tactics. There's a difference. The first is desperation. The second is strategy." Within 6 hours, we'd lost contact with 40% of our ground forces. The harvester ships were either destroyed or forced to retreat, and the humans were broadcasting footage of their victories across every frequency they could access. Commander Zilrath was furious. "This is impossible. They're primitives." "Primitives, who've been fighting wars since they discovered rocks," I muttered. But she didn't hear me. She ordered the fleet to begin orbital bombardment of human military installations. Show them the price of resistance. Make an example.
Standard Imperial Protocol.
The humans had anticipated this. When our ships moved into bombardment positions, they launched every rocket they had, hundreds of them, thousands, all carrying nuclear warheads, primitive missiles that our point defense systems should have easily intercepted. Should have. The humans didn't expect their missiles to penetrate our defenses. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to create a debris field of shrapnel and radiation around our fleet, forcing us to divert power to shields and limiting our mobility. While our ships were busy dealing with the nuclear barrage, the humans launched their second-wave kinetic kill vehicles. Do you know what a kinetic kill vehicle is? It's the most beautifully stupid weapon concept I've ever encountered. You take a solid mass, accelerate it to absurd velocities, and just ram it into your target. No explosives, no complex guidance systems, just mass and velocity. Physics as a weapon. And it worked. 3 of our destroyers were holed. 1 battlecruiser had its port engine array completely sheared off. The fleet was forced to retreat to higher orbit while damage control teams scrambled to make repairs. On the command deck, the mood had shifted from contempt to concern. These weren't supposed to be warriors. This was supposed to be easy. Zilrath called for reinforcements. More ships, more troops, more resources. The High Council approved immediately. After all, we couldn't let a primitive species embarrass the Imperium. What would the other subject races think? That's when the humans did something absolutely insane. They sent us a message. Not a military communication, a civilian broadcast. Video footage from something called social media. It showed humans, ordinary civilians, gathering in their cities despite the danger. They were holding signs, chanting, their voices unified. "You want our blood?" they shouted. "Come and take it." But they weren't afraid. They were angry, and they were organized. I watched footage of human factory workers, some barely adults, assembling weapons around the clock. I saw scientists who'd spent their lives curing diseases now designing biological weapons. I watched children, actual younglings, being taught to use firearms and explosives. "They're militarizing their entire population," observed Tactical Officer Brennix, his voice hollow. "Every human is becoming a combatant." "Impossible," Zilrath snapped. "No species can sustain total war indefinitely. They'll exhaust themselves." But I was looking at the data differently. I was seeing the industrial output, the resource allocation, the sheer determination in every transmission we intercepted, and I was realizing something terrifying. "Commander," I said quietly. "What if they can? What if their entire evolutionary history has prepared them for exactly this kind of conflict?" She didn't want to hear it. None of them did. The reinforcements arrived 2 weeks later. A full battle fleet, 20 warships, 50 support vessels, 10,000 troops. Overwhelming force. This time we'd do it properly. Systematic occupation, no mercy. Complete subjugation. The fleet moved into Earth orbit, and Commander Zilrath personally delivered the final ultimatum. Surrender now or we'd glass their cities one by one until compliance was achieved. The humans, through Marcus Cole, responded with 2 words, Molon Labe. When I looked up the translation, I found it was from an ancient human warrior culture. It meant come and take them. The second invasion began at dawn over a place called Europe. Dropships descended in formation, protected by fighter screens and orbital fire support. This time we'd learned from our mistakes. This time we were ready for their guerrilla tactics. The humans had learned too. They'd spent the last 2 weeks studying our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses. They'd adapted. When our dropships descended, they didn't attack immediately. They waited until we were committed. Our forces spread across multiple landing zones. Then they hit us with electromagnetic pulse weapons, whole devices that shouldn't have penetrated our shielding. But the humans had figured out our shield frequencies and tuned their weapons accordingly. Half our equipment went dead in an instant. While we scrambled to reboot systems, the humans attacked with conventional weapons, but not randomly. They'd identified command vehicles, communications relays, supply depots. They knew exactly where to hit us to cause maximum chaos. Holes we scrambled to reboot systems. The humans attacked with conventional weapons, and they used the terrain. Every building, every street, every sewer system became a weapon. They'd studied urban warfare for centuries, and they turned their cities into death traps. Our troops, trained for open warfare against conventional forces, were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight fairly. "They're not following any recognizable tactical doctrine," one commander shouted in frustration. "That's because they're using all of them simultaneously."
"Eat it,"
I realized, every strategy, every tactic, every dirty trick they've learned from thousands of years of warfare, they're throwing everything at us and seeing what sticks. Within 48 hours, we'd lost another 30% of our ground forces. The humans were broadcasting footage again, showing our soldiers retreating, our equipment burning, our commanders making panicked reports. But what really broke my spirit was a particular video. It showed a young human female, couldn't have been more than 20 cycles old, standing over a disabled Valdreen soldier. She wasn't torturing him or killing him. She was bandaging his wounds while her companions guarded the position. Why? The soldier asked in broken human language. Why help enemy? The young woman looked at him with these fierce eyes. Because we're not monsters. When this is over, when you're beaten, we want you to go home and tell your people what happened here. Tell them that humans showed you more mercy than you showed us. Tell them that we could have been friends, but you chose to make us enemies. Then she looked directly at the camera, and tell them we're coming. The video ended on the command deck. Nobody spoke. That night, I compiled my assessment report. I marked it priority urgent and sent it directly to the High Council. My conclusion: immediate withdrawal from Earth, full diplomatic overtures, reparations if necessary. We'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. The response came back within hours. Denied. The Imperium doesn't retreat, victory or extinction. I started making plans to steal an escape pod. Because I'd figured out what everyone else was too proud to see. We hadn't encountered a primitive species. We'd encountered a species that had spent its entire existence fighting for survival on a death world, developing every possible method of killing, and then turning those methods on each other for practice. We didn't hunt humanity. We'd blundered into a trap set by evolution itself. And the humans were just getting started. So there I was, 3 weeks into what was supposed to be a simple harvesting operation, watching the Valdreen Imperium's military doctrine crumble like stale ration bars. The High Council had denied my withdrawal recommendation, which meant I had two options: stay and die with honor or run and live with shame. I chose option 3, stay and document everything, because somebody needed to survive to warn the rest of the galaxy what happens when you poke humanity with a stick. Commander Zilrath called an emergency strategy meeting. Every senior officer still alive attended, which tells you something about our casualty rates. Holographic display showed Earth now dotted with hundreds of red markers indicating lost positions, destroyed equipment, and dead soldiers. Gentlemen, Zilrath began, and I noticed her feeding appendages were trembling slightly. We need to reassess our approach. Reassess? Tactical Officer Brennick slammed his manipulator on the table. We need to orbitally bombard every human city until nothing remains but radioactive craters. They're making us look like fools. That would destroy the resources we came to harvest, pointed out Science Coordinator Velmac. The blood proteins denature under extreme radiation. We'd be left with a dead world and nothing to show for it. Better a dead world than this humiliation. Brennick shot back. I raised my appendage, if I may interject with some actual tactical analysis instead of wounded pride. Zilrath gestured for me to continue. She looked exhausted, which was fair considering she hadn't regenerated in 72 hours. The humans are fighting asymmetrically because they understand their limitations, I explained, pulling up combat data. But they're also doing something we haven't seen from other species. They're learning faster than we can adapt. Every tactic we use, they counter within days. Every weapon we deploy, they find a weakness. They're treating this like some kind of accelerated educational program where the tuition is paid in blood. What are you suggesting? Zilrath asked. I'm suggesting that we're not fighting a primitive species. We're fighting a species that evolved in an environment so hostile that warfare became their primary survival mechanism. Look at their planet. I projected Earth's biosphere data. Predators everywhere. Diseases that kill millions. Weather patterns that regularly destroy entire settlements. Tectonics that literally reshape the landscape. The humans didn't develop civilization despite these challenges. They developed it because of them. Velmac studied the data, his optical sensors widening. Their entire evolutionary path has been one continuous survival crisis. Exactly, I said, and now we've become their latest crisis. Except unlike earthquakes and plagues, we made the mistake of being something they can fight back against. Zilrath was quiet for a long moment, then she straightened. Irrelevant. The High Council demands victory. We'll achieve it through superior numbers and technology. I'm authorizing the use of biological weapons. The room went silent. Biological weapons were technically forbidden under Imperium law, but technicalities tend to evaporate when you're losing. Specifically, Zilrath continued, "We'll deploy pathogen strain 77. It's airborne, highly contagious among carbon-based life forms and has a 98% mortality rate. We release it over major population centers, wait for the die-off, then move in to harvest from the survivors." "That's genocide," I said flatly. "That's victory," Zilrath corrected. "The humans chose this path. They could have surrendered." I wanted to argue, but what was the point? Your decision was made. We were going to attempt to exterminate humanity with a plague, harvest the survivors, and hope the High Council would overlook the moral implications because we'd finally brought home the medical breakthrough they wanted. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out that way. The biological weapon was deployed over a city called Tokyo, population 37 million. We calculated that within 2 weeks, the pathogen would spread globally, reducing human population by 90%. Then we'd simply walk in and collect what we needed from the traumatized remnants. Week 1. The pathogen spread exactly as predicted. The human hospitals were overwhelmed. Their medical systems, primitive as they were, couldn't cope. Casualty reports started flooding in. Millions infected. Hundreds of thousands dead. We thought we'd won. Week 2. Something changed. The infection rate started slowing, then stopping, then reversing. "Impossible," Velmac whispered, staring at the data. "The pathogen is mutating. It's becoming less lethal." "Pathogens don't just spontaneously become less lethal," Zilrath snapped. "This one is," Velmac insisted. "And according to these readings, it's not random mutation. Someone is deliberately altering it." Turns out, the humans had captured samples of the pathogen within the first 48 hours. Their scientists, working around the clock in whatever facilities hadn't been destroyed, had sequenced it, understood it, and engineered a counteragent, not a cure. They didn't have time for that. Instead, they'd released a modified version of the pathogen that competed with ours, gradually replacing it with a harmless variant. They'd weaponized evolution against us. In 2 weeks. "How?" Zilrath demanded, reviewing the reports. "How did they develop that level of genetic manipulation so quickly?" I pulled up human scientific history, because they've been doing genetic research for over a century. They've mapped their own genome. They've created synthetic organisms. They've been modifying life at the molecular level for decades. We assumed primitive meant ignorant. We were wrong. But the humans weren't done. Oh no! They were just warming up. While we'd been focused on the biological attack, the humans had been busy with something else. They'd reverse-engineered our technology. Debris from destroyed ships, captured equipment, disabled weapons systems. They'd studied everything, taken it apart, figured out how it worked. And then they'd built their own versions. The first indication came when one of our supply ships traveling from the orbital platform to a surface base simply disappeared. No distress call, no debris, just gone. "Possible malfunction?" suggested one officer hopefully. Then a second ship vanished. Then a third. "That's not malfunction," I said, feeling dread settle in my organs. "That's ambush." The humans had built fighters. Crude ones, sure, using a patchwork of their technology and ours. But they worked. And they were flown by pilots who'd spent their entire careers training for aerial combat, who understood three-dimensional warfare instinctively, who weren't afraid to use suicide tactics if it meant taking out a target. Within a week, we'd lost orbital superiority. Our ships couldn't safely descend to the surface. Our ground forces were cut off, running low on supplies, facing an enemy that grew stronger every day. Commander Zilrath called for more reinforcements. The High Council sent them another battle fleet, this one twice the size of the previous one. 40 warships, 100 support vessels, 25,000 troops. They dropped out of hyperspace directly into a trap. The humans had been monitoring our hyperspace signatures, learning our travel patterns. They'd positioned mines, salvaged from our own equipment and repurposed, along the most likely entry vectors. They'd also built ground-based energy weapons using our own directed energy technology. The human commander, Marcus Cole, broadcast a message as the battle began. He was standing in what looked like a military command center, surrounded by officers and technicians. He looked even more tired than before, but his eyes were bright with something that might have been savage joy. "The Commander Zilrath," he said calmly. All explosions lit up the space behind him. "Did you really think we'd just roll over after you tried to plague us? Did you think we'd forgive you for attempting genocide? You've made 3 critical mistakes. First, you underestimated human stubbornness. Second, you underestimated human ingenuity. Third, and most importantly, you gave us time to prepare. On screen, I watched as human fighters, strange hybrid vessels that looked like they'd been assembled in someone's garage, swarmed our reinforcement fleet. They were outmatched, outgunned, but they fought with a coordination that spoke of extensive practice. And they were using tactics that no civilized species would consider. Ramming attacks, self-destruct maneuvers, sacrificing individual ships to create openings for others. We didn't want this war, Marcus Cole continued. We would have traded with you, learned from you, maybe even become friends. Oh, but you looked at us and saw livestock. So now you're going to learn what livestock does when it grows teeth. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 30% of our reinforcement fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated to high orbit, too damaged to be effective. On the command deck, Zilrath stared at the casualty reports like they were written in some alien language she couldn't comprehend. This is impossible, she whispered. We're the Imperium. We've conquered hundreds of species. Yeah, I said quietly. Species that surrendered. The humans aren't going to surrender, Commander. They're going to fight until we're all dead or we leave. Those are the only options. She turned to look at me, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in her optical sensors. What are they? Survivors, I replied. The kind forged in fire and hardened by 10,000 years of continuous warfare. We picked a fight with evolution's meanest experiment, and now we're paying the price. That night, I sent another report to the High Council. This one was even more urgent. Immediate withdrawal, full retreat, accept the loss and move on. We couldn't win this. Every day we stayed, we lost more ships, more soldiers, more credibility. The response came back within an hour. Denied. The Imperium doesn't retreat. Prepare for final offensive. Final offensive. They were going to throw everything we had at Earth in one massive attack. Overwhelming force.
Scorched Earth.
Either we'd win through sheer numbers or we'd make the planet uninhabitable and deny the humans their victory. I started actively planning my escape. The final offensive was scheduled for dawn, Earth Standard Time. Every functional ship, every remaining soldier, every weapon system we had left, we'd hit them with everything simultaneously. Orbital bombardment, ground assault, electronic warfare, biological weapons, kinetic strikes, total war. Commander Zilrath gave the order. The fleet moved into position. Troops loaded into dropships. Weapons were armed. That's when the humans played their final card. Remember how I said they'd been reverse engineering our technology? Turns out they'd been working on something special, something ambitious, something ambitious, something ambitious, something absolutely insane. They'd built their own hyperspace-capable vessels. 3 of them, to be precise. Massive ships constructed from the cannibalized remains of our destroyed fleet, welded together with human technology, powered by our own energy cores that they'd somehow learned to operate. The ships were ugly, asymmetrical, probably held together by human stubbornness and what they called duct tape. But they worked. The 3 ships appeared via hyperspace jump right in the middle of our fleet formation, point-blank range, too close for our heavy weapons to target effectively, and they were broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Captain Elena Vasquez, of the Earth Defense Force ship Defiance, said a human female voice, steady and cold. You came to our world. You tried to enslave us. You tried to exterminate us.
Now let me show you what happens when you back humans into a corner.
The 3 human ships opened fire with everything they had. Hall's missiles, energy weapons, kinetic rounds, even nuclear warheads. They weren't trying to win the battle. They were trying to create chaos. And chaos they created. Our formation broke apart. Ships collided trying to evade fire. Point defense systems locked onto friendly vessels by mistake.
In the confusion, more human fighters launched from the planet's surface, adding to the mayhem.
I watched from the command deck as Captain Vasquez's ship, badly damaged and burning, rammed directly into our flagship's engine section. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire vessel. Alarms screamed. Bulkheads collapsed. The ship began listing badly. All hands, abandon ship, Zilrath ordered, her voice finally breaking. Retreat to auxiliary vessels. Full withdrawal. But the humans weren't letting us retreat cleanly. As our ships tried to disengage, they pursued. Those jerry-rigged fighters harassed us every parsec. The 2 remaining human capital ships, battered but functional, shadowed our fleet all the way to the system's edge. And then Marcus Cole sent one final transmission. He appeared on screen standing in that same command center. Behind him I could see humans celebrating, cheering, embracing each other. "Go home, Valdreen," he said simply. "Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not prey. We're not subjects. We're not resources to be harvested. We're a sovereign species and we will fight anyone who threatens that sovereignty. If you come back, we'll be ready. And next time we'll bring the fight to you." The transmission ended. We jumped to hyperspace with what remained of our fleet. 12 damaged warships out of an original force of 60, maybe 5,000 troops out of 35,000, and absolutely zero samples of human biological material. The journey home took 2 weeks. I spent most of it compiling my final report, documenting everything that had gone wrong, analyzing every mistake we'd made. The report was 500 pages long. The conclusion was one sentence: never attack humanity again. When we arrived at the homeworld, we found the High Council in emergency session. News of our defeat had already spread. Subject species across the Imperium were questioning Valdreen's superiority. Some were openly rebelling. The empire we'd built over 3,000 years was fracturing because we'd lost to a species that didn't even have faster-than-light travel 3 months ago. Commander Zilrath was immediately arrested and executed for incompetence. Several High Council members resigned in disgrace. The rest were scrambling to contain the damage. I was called to testify before what remained of the council. I presented my report, explained what happened, offered my analysis. The council leader, an ancient Valdreen named Korthax, listened in silence. When I finished, he asked one question. "In your professional assessment, what would happen if we launched another invasion of Earth, with our full military might?" I didn't hesitate. We would lose. The humans would study our tactics, adapt our technology, and turn our own weapons against us. Then they'd figure out how to reach our homeworld and return the favor. If we're very lucky, they'd be willing to negotiate peace terms. If we're unlucky, they'd do to us what we tried to do to them. Korthax sat back in his throne, looking older than his 800 cycles. "Then what do you suggest?" "Whole, send an ambassador," I said. "Offer reparations, open diplomatic channels. Whole, learn from them instead of trying to conquer them. Because whether we like it or not, humanity just announced itself to the galaxy, and we made sure their announcement was written in Valdreen blood." The council debated for 3 days. Finally, they reached a decision: full diplomatic recognition of Earth, non-aggression treaty, reparations paid in technology and resources, formal apology to humanity. I was appointed as the Imperium's first ambassador to Earth, probably because I was the only senior officer who'd actually understood what we were dealing with. When I arrived at Earth in an unarmed diplomatic vessel, I was met by Marcus Cole himself. We sat in a simple room, no weapons, no guards, just two beings who'd been on opposite sides of a very short, very brutal war. "Why did you fight so hard?" I asked him. "You could have surrendered, saved millions of lives, accepted our terms." Marcus looked at me with those cold, tired eyes. "Because if we'd surrendered to you, the next species that showed up would expect the same. We'd become the galaxy's victims, forever. So we chose to fight. We chose to show the universe that humanity will pay any price, endure any hardship, face any enemy to remain free." He paused, then continued. "Besides, we've been fighting each other for our entire history, having a common external enemy that actually united us for the first time in 10,000 years. Fei Jive is Forded same. In 10,000 years. So in a weird way you did us a favor. By trying to exterminate you? By giving us a reason to stop killing each other and focus on someone else," he replied with a slight smile. "Don't worry, we'll probably go back to fighting among ourselves eventually. But for now, we're united.
And we're looking at the stars with new purpose."
That was 5 years ago. Since then, humanity has established relations with 17 other species. They've built a proper space navy. They've colonized 3 systems. They've become a recognized power in galactic politics. And the Valdreen Imperium? We're still recovering, still rebuilding, still trying to figure out how we went from apex predators to cautionary tale. Other species ask me about humans. What are they like? Can they be trusted? Are they dangerous? I tell them the truth. Humans are contradictions. They're violent and compassionate. They're stubborn and adaptable. They're capable of both atrocity and heroism. They'll fight you to the death, then offer you medical treatment afterward. They'll reverse engineer your technology, then invite you to dinner. But most importantly, they're survivors. Not because they're the strongest or the smartest, because they refuse to give up, because they'll try anything, sacrifice anything, endure anything to protect what they consider theirs. We wanted their blood to extend our lives. Instead, their blood stained our thrones and taught us humility. So if you ever encounter humanity, remember this. Treat them with respect, offer them friendship, because if you make them your enemy, you'll learn the same lesson we did. You'll learn that when you hunt humans, you're not the predator. You're the prey. And that's my testimony. That's how the Valdreen Imperium fell, not to superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but to a species that simply refused to lose. Korven, former Strategic Assessor of the Valdreen Imperium, signing off. May the Void have mercy on anyone foolish enough to ignore this warning.